Okay. Once again, hello, my name is Marybeth Rogers, she, they pronouns. I'm a teen services librarian at Dayton Metro Library. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about deals with the library system that I've been a part of for a long time. But also I've been looking at a lot of different things. Let's talk about EDI in the libraries. EDI is equity, diversity, and inclusion, as I'm sure most of you know, and it is a foundational part of library services, period. A lot of times we look at what that means for how libraries serve patrons, which is very important. I'm not saying it's not, but I am saying I have a time limit. So we are going to focus on mostly the internal aspects of EDI in your library. The facts are that being a librarian is not as easy to get into as what a lot of people would think. I work with a lot of kids that are below the poverty line. They cannot afford bachelor's degrees, let alone grad school degrees. So if you work at a library system that requires a master's to be a librarian or a manager, then you're really cutting out a lot of people based on their economic status. And that disproportionately affects certain areas of the population than it does others. Generational poverty is a real thing, and it's something that affects a lot of people, but mostly minorities. If you're looking at your library system and your staff does not visually represent the community that it serves, then you really need to start asking yourself why that is, why that happens the way that it is. But also, diversity isn't just based on your skin color. It's also based on your abilities. It's based on a lot of different areas. And the library world is inherently pretty ableist. We look at the ADA requirements for our buildings and we think, yeah, absolutely. Our patrons that require those accommodations have them. We have handicap stalls. We have those buttons that you can push to open doors or automatically opening doors. We have a ramp somewhere. Well, what happens when someone forgets to turn on the power to those buttons? But also, what happens when a staff member needs those accommodations? For example, my library, you have to turn a handle and pull a door in order to get out of the workroom onto the floor. Not everybody can do that particular motion, but also, let's say you're in a wheelchair and you have to pull back enough to get you and your wheelchair through. That nothing holds that door open for you. It's going to bang your pretty expensive equipment that you are required to have in order to go around. But like, really look at job descriptions, which is what got me looking at it to begin with. The physical requirements of a lot of jobs. I'm a teen services librarian, and I can definitively tell you that the things I'm about to tell you are not required for my job in order to make me a good teen librarian. The ability to carry, lift, reach, stoop, and turn, which PS, I've looked at a lot of job descriptions across the board in a lot of systems, and for some reason that exact phrase is used a lot. Let's really look at it. How often do any of us really do those, and why is it those specific motions then when you can easily have accommodations? Like, I am not a tall person. I'm not. So when I'm in the storage room, I grab a step stool. That's an easy accommodation for me. I have terrible eyesight, so I have an accommodation that works for me. But because glasses and step stools are so normalized, people never think about them as accommodations. But they are. And so if I can have those accommodations, then other people need to really look at the accommodations that are required for them. The ability to speak and hear being a required part of anyone's job is interesting. Interpreters exist, like people that cannot speak and cannot hear need jobs like the rest of us. accommodations shouldn't just extend into how we work with our patrons, because it doesn't happen often, but we do have a couple of regular patrons that do not speak. And pandemic wise, masks have made it really difficult because they can't see the words that we're saying. They can't try and read our lips. So we've made accommodations in that area with writing down, and which isn't perfect, but it does work. So we extend those accommodations to our patrons, but for some reason we don't extend them to our staff members. And that is really part of an overarching problem, because yes, everybody wants to have a diverse staff. We all would love to have that. But when you're really looking at things like your job description and how welcoming a staff culture is to people with differences, you're looking at things that are real hindrances sometimes, because what keeps someone at a location and anywhere is the feeling that they belong where they're at. If somebody doesn't feel like they belong there, they are not gonna stay. They're gonna look for alternate employment. They're gonna look for alternate careers. Because if our library system is unaccommodating, and if our library system isn't accepting of all of them, not just the parts that the library wants, then what makes them think any other library system is going to be the same way? And if you've had a string of bad experiences, then you're going to leave people looking for other careers. Like, the best librarian in the world could be just in a situation where they can't afford it, so they will never go. So they'll never go to higher education, and a lot of places won't look at their resumes because of it. They require some kind of like an accommodation. For example, maybe they can't have a driver's license for some reason. There's a lot of reasons that people don't get driver's licenses, and having that as a requirement makes it really difficult, and it hinders people's ability to do that. But like, if you're looking at a work culture that is predominantly one culture, then people in minority cultures are going to feel really othered, and they're going to not want to stick with you. So like, there's a lot of factors involved with that. Anecdotally, I know someone who is of Korean descent, and she has to deal regularly with coworkers telling her that her food that she makes for her lunch smells like it has dog in it. And like, her manager won't do anything at all about that. So she's looking around, and things like that, if it's not taken seriously, is a really othering experience. And because her location is predominantly white, evangelical, suburban raised, then they don't understand her walk of life, because different cultures exist. And that's one of those things where we extend that courtesy to our patrons. We are accepting of our patrons, but for some reason, when it comes to dealing internally with your fellow staff members, or down the line with managers of staff members or administration of staff members, it's just not something that comes up. And it should be part of the larger conversation when it comes to EDI in libraries, because there's a lot of things that make everyone different, and some of those are protected statuses and some of them aren't. For example, not every state has protections for LGBTQIA plus employees. In the state of Ohio, you can, depending on where you're at, get fired for self-identifying that way. And it only gets worse in some other states. I mean, look at Florida and Texas and what they're doing right now. So it's a big conversation, and it's something that we should really be looking at internally also, because our staffs at our libraries should represent the communities that we serve, but they don't. Almost universally, they don't. And there's a lot of things that you need to look at for how that fits in all together. If any of you have LinkedIn Learning as a part of your ability to look at things, then I highly, highly recommend that you look up DIBS, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. The presenter is Pat Waiters, and she talks about belonging in like the internal aspects for institutions and how it's important to really build that. It's excellent professional development for anyone that wants to really look further in on EDI for their personal professional development. But it's also worded in such a way as like it gives you a lot of the phrases that you need to say when you're talking to management, especially management that isn't always open to change. Like we've all heard it, if it ain't broke, don't fix it when it comes to certain things. But it is inherently broken, and just because somebody has the disconnect between their position and yours doesn't mean that there's not ways that you can approach that. So EDI in the workplace starts with all of us, and we all need to definitely be more accepting and more accommodating of our fellow staff members. Thank you, Steve. That is a good point. DML does e-cards, and we have LinkedIn Learning as one of our databases. So if you need to go that route, please feel free to do so. We certainly pay for it, so you might as well benefit from it. So there's that. If anyone has any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to email me.
Awesome. Thank you, Marybeth. Now we're going to do a couple lightning talks. The first one is going to be done by Valerie, and she's going to be talking about her art club.
Okay, so how art club started, we did it in during Teen Read Week back in October. And the idea was for the entire month, each day we gave them a type of a theme, and they could choose between doing some sort of an art piece every single day and submit it, or they could just submit like once a week or only one piece. And then we posted everything, and what we made, I know usually it's nice to have the actual pieces of art, but in this case, we didn't want something to happen to their pieces of art. So we didn't say that it had to be painted or anything. We wanted them to put up or whatever they wanted. And so they sent us, they could either email it to us, they could drop it off to us, they could send it to us in Dropbox, whatever. And then we made, if it was an actual piece, we would make a color copy of it. And then we posted it in our teen room and set up a gallery. We left it up all through the month of November. It was super, super, very well received. We did give away door prizes, but I refuse to try to judge art. Everybody's art is in the eye of the artist. And so this is the first time we've done it, and it was so super, very well received. We sent it out to all the teachers in Putnam County. We have 13 both private and parochial and public schools. And we had something that was actually sent into at least half of our schools. They had students that actually submitted things. Most of our teen club members submitted stuff as well. And we're talking next fall. I had talked to a couple of different art teachers, and we're talking next fall of turning it into an actual club. And so they can actually submit their art anytime, any time of the month, throughout the entire school year. And we'll create some sort of we'll have a gallery in our teen area that they can go ahead and put their stuff up. And obviously we never put like full names up. We always just put a first name up, or maybe they want to put a nickname up or whatever. And all I can say is this was such a wonderful program. I encourage everybody to allow their teens to show their expression in their art. So if anybody's got any more questions for me, they're welcome to email me.
Awesome. Thank you, Valerie.
You're welcome.
Next, we're going to have another lightning talk by Rachel about her virtual teen advisory board.
Hey guys, Valerie, that was very quick. I'm impressed. I'm actually going to set a timer on my phone to make sure I can keep myself to just 5 minutes. So anyways, my name again is Rachel Rausch, and I am team librarian at Delaware County District Library, Orange Branch. However, I've only been here for a few months, and one of the things that I inherited when I got here was a virtual team advisory board, which had gone virtual due to COVID and had seen the number drop that I think most of us saw programming during COVID. Zoom fatigue, kids not wanting to be on the computer any more than they had to. Another reason I think those numbers dropped for volunteers was because a lot of the organizations and schools that were requiring volunteer hours waived those during COVID because it was hard for kids to get those in when everything was shut down. And, you know, we couldn't offer them free food since we were in person. So that's also, you know, that's going to detract from them wanting to come. So I am hoping to go back to in-person this fall with my tab, but I am being prepared to stay virtual because we just don't know what's going to happen in the time of COVID. And one thing that I was struggling with was that when your tab is all virtual, how are you getting them these extra hours that they want? You know, you can't have them in the building planning programs, implementing programs, doing displays, all that fun stuff that you might want a tab to be working on because they're not here. And some of those kids do really want and need those volunteer hours despite being virtual. So I have done some research, and some of these I've tried myself, some of these I might try in the future. My basic tab structure is pretty normal. We meet once a month for 1 hour on Zoom, and we talk about normal tab stuff, you know, programs, the library. So this is more stuff that they could do on their own. So suggestions that they could do on their own. One thing that I have suggested to my tab is they can write book recommendations for me. So we have a rule that 3 book recommendations equals 1 hour of volunteer time. And these book recommendations aren't just to give them a time, you know, to throw them a bone for some volunteer time. We actually will use them. We have a slideshow in our team zone that has program information, book recommendations, things like that. And they can also create content for that slideshow. It has trivia and stuff on it. And what I would like to do, and I'm sure some of you have seen this before, with some of those reviews is link them to a QR code and then put them in the actual book that's being reviewed so people who take that book can scan the code and see the team's book review. So book reviews are one thing. They can also make book lists. We have a really, really nice catalog that staff members can make book lists on, and anyone in the country who uses our catalog can see lists that they create. So if they give book lists to me, then I can go ahead and create lists that everyone can see. Another thing is just writing some encouraging notes or drawing pictures to put in books for kids, and especially like early readers, kids who are learning to read. Another suggestion I've seen is to read to someone, maybe such as like an elderly person, or if you have a younger sister or brother or something, allow them to read to you. And also to do some online trainings. We have a My Library Niche Academy, and Niche Academy is can be specific to the library as far as the trainings that you put on there. So they could take a training on how to use our audio booth or how to use our research databases. So that's going to help them in their own life and also when they're back in the building volunteering, because they'll just have more know-how about how to do stuff. Another thing I've seen suggested is spending some time reading professional development books. So my library has a pretty overwhelming number of summer volunteers, like over 200. And part of what I'm doing, because that's not a manageable number, is streamlining that this year. So one way that I brought some tab members back into the fold is by letting them know that spaces are going to be limited for summer reading club this year. And so the tab members are going to get first priority. Active tab members will get first priority on summer volunteer spots. And so once that announcement went out to all of our active volunteers, I saw a renewed interest in the tab because they want to make sure that they're able to get those coveted summer volunteer spots. So I think I'm right at about 5 minutes. I don't know that we have time for questions, but if you guys have any questions about virtual tab or suggestions, like I said, I inherited this several months ago. I'm still new to it. So if anyone has anything else they want to share, I am putting my address in the chat. And you can feel free to follow up with me or post to our social media.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So for the next 5 minutes-ish, we're going to take a break. And then when we come back, we'll have a couple more lightning talks. So let's step away for a few minutes, focus on something far away, bathroom break, drinks, snacks, and then we'll meet here at 12:15.